Society for about 5 years now, but I've been with the Alzheimer Society in some capacity for the last 21 years. So I have lots of dementia knowledge that I hope I can impart on you today. And please feel free to stop me and ask questions, or we can wait till the end, whatever you feel like doing or whatever your preference is. Come join us. It's so nice to see a big crowd, and I love that. I love to talk to people, so it's good. All right, we're here to talk about normal aging versus dementia. Before I do that, how many people walked in a room and forgot why they were there this week? Me too, me too. Okay. The reason that I'm out here and doing this, and why all of you are probably here and maybe a bit concerned about memory, is that in Canada, about 564,000 people are living with dementia. This is the persons who have been to a doctor, they've had an assessment, and somewhere on some statistical piece of paper, they have a diagnosis of dementia. So we know that there's a lot more people who do not have that and are not being counted in this number. We know that in Ontario, that number is about 249,000, and in Niagara, the Hopkins report says that we are at approximately 11,249 people here in Niagara. Now you might have heard this number recently because that's how many steps we're walking this weekend. One for every person living with dementia in Niagara. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the walk later because you should come out. It's a great health fair. You get to meet all of the community providers who are going to be there able to help you. But here's the scary part. The risk for dementia actually doubles every 5 years after the age of 65. So these are scary numbers for people, and there are things we can do to help. We're going to touch on those things really briefly today, and then I'm going to come back in 4 weeks and expand that conversation about things we can do to keep our brain healthy. However, 1 in 10 individuals over the age of 65 are living with some form of dementia. And by 2031, that number is expected to reach about 937,000. Actually, some of the numbers say even 1 million now. And the reason we're seeing such a high increase in persons living with dementia is the idea that there's this generation of a large population coming into their 65 and over years. They were commonly referred to as the baby boomer generation. And that generation is coming into their 65 plus years, and therefore we have a larger population. In fact, in Niagara, we're the second largest senior population in all of Canada. So we're big here. And that is behind, I think, Victoria, BC. So I think we're south. People think we have a lot more sun, which we do today, which is lovely. 3 out of 4 Canadians will know someone living with dementia. I imagine many of you in the room know somebody who is living with dementia, but 4 out of 4 Canadians are impacted by dementia. Okay, so I asked you about your walking into a room and forgetting what was going on, or maybe running into someone outside of the context of where you usually see them and forgetting their name, or tripping over a word now and then, which can be a bit scary when you're over 65 and thinking, uh-oh, right? So let's talk a little bit about normal aging before we get into some of the risk factors for dementia. So I don't know about you, I'm over 40 now, and generally speaking, we get to that point, we start to see, I don't know, a few gray hairs here and there. I tend to cover mine up, but still, they're there. Some thinning of our skin, some additional wrinkles happening, some aches and pains in our joints, and all of a sudden, things are not working as well as they used to. And that all starts around the age of 40, when our brain starts to age as well. And when our brain is aging, we start to have what we call normal aging. And I mean, 40% of the population over the age of 65 are going to experience some sort of memory loss, but not all that memory loss is dementia. So some of it is normal aging. Typically normal aging is there's no underlying medical concerns. So I can walk into your doctor's office, I can give you an assessment. Some of you might have seen these things. Draw a clock, name these words, connect these dots, right? Some of those kinds of things. Tell me the date and time. Who knows the date and time today? You're overtired, you're not supposed to. Okay, so I don't even know it, and I have to fill out paperwork every single day. But if those tests are normal, So that means that you didn't necessarily score perfect, but you scored 26 and above on the normal test out of 30. And there's nothing going on in your day-to-day life that's causing you to not be able to do your normal activities of daily living. You're still cooking and driving and balancing your checkbook and doing all the things you normally did. That's normal aging. Normal aging changes that are happening. What we know is that persons who normally age sometimes have trouble remembering names. They have trouble finding words in conversations once in a while. They forget why they went in a room, and we sit down and we have to get ourselves back up and walk all the way back to the living room to remember why we came to the kitchen. Right? We have to do that. It takes us a little bit longer to recall things. So when we're playing Jeopardy, and yes, I miss Alex Trebek. When you're playing Jeopardy, it takes a little longer to get those answers out. You're not beating the buzzer anymore, right? But that's okay. The speed of information and processing gradually slows as we get older. Your executive functioning, things like planning and abstract thinking, they remain very normal when you have normal aging. In fact, there are some areas of the brain that do better. So for example, persons who are older have much better empathy. They are much better actually at problem solving in some ways than younger people. Maybe that's because we actually get it and there's experience there, right? We have that ability to be more logical. And we know we have some slower speeds, but it still recalls. And I think the word recall is the most important thing to talk about when we talk about normal aging. When you normally age and you forget something, it comes back to you. Yes, it comes back to you at midnight and you finally fall asleep. However, it comes back to you. And so that's important. Our family and friends, they're not so concerned about our memory when it's normal aging. They might make jokes. My grandfather used to say, "I'm having a brain fart." And that's fine. But he had brain farts, but he was doing okay. And so we weren't concerned as a family. Typically when there's dementia symptoms, family is also concerned. So when we talk about normal aging, it's important to talk about some of the warning symptoms of dementia. But before I talk about the warning symptoms of dementia, does anybody have any questions about normal aging? Nobody wants to talk in front of the whole room? Okay, if you think of a question, just let me know. Put your hand up. That's okay. All right, let's talk about the warning symptoms because there are some symptoms of dementia or memory loss that we do need to be concerned about sometimes. Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to talk about all of these symptoms: memory loss, misplacing things, difficulty with decision-making, reduced ability to understand visual images, confusion with timing and place, mood swings, repetitive speech, and writing issues, difficulty in problem solving, social withdrawal, and an inability to complete tasks. And you all might go, uh-oh, because we all have these problems sometimes. That doesn't necessarily mean we have dementia, but when we have a combined amount or an escalating, it's going up, we're getting more and more of these, then we need to make sure we talk to our doctor, which we'll talk about in a minute. All right, so we're going to start with memory loss that is affecting our day-to-day abilities. So not just, I forgot what I was doing in the kitchen and I had to retrace my steps. It is normal to occasionally forget things like appointments, colleagues' names or friends, phone numbers, if anyone remembers the phone number anymore. I remember the phone number of my best friend when we were in the grade school. 356-6861. Nobody, I don't know who owns that phone number now, but still. You know, people don't have to do that, but we tend to remember things a short while later. It tends to come back to us if we have normal aging. However, if you're living with a dementia or a mild cognitive impairment, which I'll talk about in a minute, we might forget things more often and we have difficulty recalling that information. We can't bring it back. It doesn't come back to us, even at midnight. When we talk about difficulty performing familiar tasks, so Are you or the person you know that you're worried about forgetting how to do a typical routine task? Now, typical routine tasks are something you've always done. So when I talk about myself, I'm a really special kind of girl. My husband decided he was going to be the chief cook in my house. Spaghetti sauce, still do it once in a while. I can, do lots of meals, but my steak and potato and vegetable, compared to his steak with whatever sauce he's made and his vegetables with whatever spices he's put on it and his potato that's twice baked with cheese, doesn't compare. So he took that over. However, that doesn't mean that I'm having trouble for doing that familiar task. I just don't do it very often. So now you lose the skill. You ever heard that? If you don't work on it, you don't get to do it. So that doesn't mean that something's changing. So if all of you are not doing tasks you did for a long time, for whatever reason, but you could figure it out again if you needed to, that's not a change in your tasks. People can be, busy and distracted from time to time, so they might forget certain things. You might forget, my mother does it all the time. She says, oh my goodness, the carrots are in the microwave and they don't get served at Sunday dinner. That happens. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're living with a dementia, but if it's happening over and over and over again, maybe we need to get a test. However, a person living with dementia may have major trouble completing some of their normal tasks, things that have been familiar to them their whole lives. And if that is the case, we need to think that, we might need to look at this. Okay, so problems with language. So some people forget words or substitute words, and we all trip over words once in a while. And some of us are the ums and likes of the world, and we like to say those things in between every sentence and every pause. And that's okay too. But sometimes we have real trouble finding a word, and we can't recall that word, or we start to have language changes that makes it hard to express what we're saying or doing. We can't tell people what we want. We start to lose vocabulary. And persons living with dementia may forget simple words or substitute words more often, and we might find it difficult to sometimes understand them. That is what we call aphasia. So aphasia is a very common symptom of dementia, and there are two types of aphasia. So one type is the receptive, means I can't understand what's being said to me. And to be honest, the research says that people in the early stages in the dementia may lose 1 in every 4 words we say to them. And that's a lot, which is why we need to utilize great communication strategies. Things like making sure we're having eye contact, that we're speaking clearly and concisely, that we give one piece of information at a time, and that we're willing to repeat at least once the same way before we rephrase something. And we give time. That's why when I say, do you have any questions? I count to 10 in my head. We need to do that in constant conversation with people living with dementia. And so it's important to know that language is a huge problem even in the early stages. So I asked you all if you knew the date today, and you probably did because you knew you were coming here, so you marked it on your calendar. So persons living with dementia may become disoriented to time and space, and we do all do that. Every once in a while we get the phone call from the eye doctor saying, oh, you were supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. And that's okay, that happens. We miss appointments, or we are late for something. But if you know someone that's really struggling with days and times of weeks, or doesn't know it's 2023, we might question whether or not that sort of disorientation to time and place may be a little bit more than normal aging. And of course, people living with dementia can also become lost in their space. So if you see someone who's looking lost or confused out and about, you can normally spot them. People who are really looking a little bit confused about where you are, all you have to do is walk around any sort of tourist area of the town and you'll see all these people. You can see the look on their face when they're lost. We know that those persons may need a little extra support, and that disorientation may be more than normal aging. Impaired judgment. So sometimes the person doesn't recognize things, especially health and safety-wise, that put them at risk. So we know that persons living with dementia may have a symptom of dementia called anosognosia. Big word, doesn't really matter, I know. Okay, now you have to say it 5 times fast because you laughed at me. That's okay. I'm not going to make you do that. But anosognosia is the lack of insight. What it means is I don't know that I am sick. I don't know that there's something wrong with me. I can't appreciate what's happening to me. I can't tell you that I have dementia and what that means for me and everyone around you. I might tell you I have memory problems or my brain's not working properly, but I can't necessarily appreciate. And when someone tells me I have dementia, sometimes people with dementia will say, "You're a moron. That's not true." And they get upset with us because we tell them that. So we know that that's part of, and that can happen. And because of that, they don't know they're not sick. They also don't know that they maybe shouldn't walk alone, or they shouldn't climb up chairs to get things out of the cupboards, or they are doing other safety impaired things that may put them at risk. They have some judgment impairments. So you might see them wearing heavy clothing on a hot day, or participating in activities that they shouldn't because that puts them at risk. And they often, with that impaired judgment, may not see a doctor as often as they should. Problems with abstract thinking. So abstract thinking are things like numbers and symbols and figuring things out. And so from time to time, we all have some trouble with abstract thinking. I don't expect that everyone here can do the Super Sudoku on their own. That's abstract thinking. I don't expect that everyone can perfectly balance a checkbook, especially if it's complicated numbers and math is not your strong suit. However, someone who has dementia is going to have more significant difficulties with those tasks because they lose the understanding of numbers and how they are used and what they stand for. And that goes to numbers that are written on a paper, but also with making change, using their dollars, using their debit card, those kinds of complex tasks. Okay, so misplacing things. So putting things in places they shouldn't be. Well, we've seen the commercial, right? We've seen the commercial where the milk is in the microwave or the keys are in the freezer or those kinds of things. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we make mistakes. But persons with dementia sometimes make more mistakes. And the other piece is, because of that anosognosia I talked about, they might think someone stole their items or that someone else has been in their home because they don't recognize that it's them, but maybe putting something somewhere that it shouldn't go. And when that happens, it can be very scary for them. But for normal aging, we generally figure we can retrace our steps and find the item that we're missing. So we also see changes in mood and behavior when it comes to symptoms of dementia. So are you exhibiting some severe mood changes? Now, important if you have severe mood changes that you get a test for depression and anxiety. Those are important things and are very common in the senior population. So, and not always what you think. So if you're feeling a bit down or you're feeling a little bit lethargic, you don't want to involve yourself in things, it's important to know that we should get our mental health screened as well. But anyone can feel moody, anyone can get up on the wrong side of the bed, anyone can have a grumpy day, and I expect that that's okay. But if we have varied mood swings that are really quite extreme, up and down, calmness to tears, overreactions to things that most of us would say, not a big deal. Or overreactions as in, we would stay mad for a couple days, but someone dwells on it for a really long time, and that's not part of their personality. They may be signs that someone's having some difficulty with the front part of their brain. So this is our frontal lobe. It gives us judgment, problem solving, emotional awareness. Our filter, it tells us not to say things we shouldn't say. And if you're having some trouble there, that we can see these changes in mood and personality. So we said behavior and of course personality as well. And that can be someone who becomes suspicious, confused, withdrawn, childlike, more angry. We can see all of those things. So we can see some really striking personality changes in people. And that can include the opposite of real withdrawal and apathy in someone who doesn't participate at all. So the loss of initiative. So this idea that someone is not interested in any of their favorite things. They're not interested in coming, you don't see them coming out to your clubs anymore. They're not really calling people on the phone. They're not participating in their normal activities. This is a symptom of dementia called apathy. And apathy can really be not just in social groups. It can be in everyday life where someone doesn't even want to participate in some of their normal activities of just maintaining their household or their hygiene or those kinds of pieces. I mean, everyone has days where we feel like doing nothing. Today, I feel like walking around in your neighborhood, such a beautiful day out there, right? But we all have certain things that motivate us. They get us out of bed, they get us doing things. We have obligations. Other days, it's okay to ignore those, but people with dementia don't feel that if they have apathy and they have a loss of initiative. They don't have get up and go. I say their get up and go has gone up and went. And they don't feel bored and they don't feel sad because they don't feel those emotions. They don't feel motivation. So those are some of the warning signs of dementia, some things that we see and some of the major symptoms we see. What questions do you have about those warning signs? One in the back.
It almost seems as though that characteristic would be consistent. Day to day. Oh, I'm sorry. Day to day. I've got a teacher's voice, so I.
That's all right.
That's me too. I normally don't talk to
the microphone.
My husband has been diagnosed with dementia. Some of these characteristics are.
Gotta eat it.
Eat the mic.
It's gonna close your mouth.
Well, I don't want germs.
Some days those characteristics are evident, other days they're not. These are not characteristics that are consistent every day.
That is true. So dementia does vary and have fluctuations, for sure. That's a good point. What other questions? So some of the scary things about dementia, right? So let me move to my next slide. And I'm not going to get into these too much today because we are going to talk about these more in-depthly at my next session when I come back in June. But there are some things that we do for controlling our lifestyle choices, and there are some great studies. Specifically a study that came out in 2023 called the Landmark Study that says that modifiable risk factors, things that we do to keep our brain healthy, which we're going to break down in our next session, can help us prevent the onset of dementia and also help us to maintain our brain health if we're living with an MCI or dementia. So I'm going to talk about MCI versus dementia in a second. But these are things like using a good healthy diet, challenging our brain, and being physically active, which I'm not going to break down too much today, but certainly we can picture what those may look like. And of course, the most important thing is being socially involved in reducing stress. You've all heard the term, if you don't use it, use it. And so sitting in front of a TV and nodding off and sleeping all day is not going to be helpful for our brain. Now we will talk more about our healthy brain activities and really break those down and give you more information about those in our next session. So we've talked a little bit about normal aging and the symptoms you can look for with dementia, but I would be remiss if I did not take you through that memory is on a spectrum. So on one end of our spectrum, we have our normal aging. And so what we said was our normal aging was that we had no objective cognitive loss. Now, objective cognitive loss means I can't test it. That means I can't give you an assessment and see any problem, and we recall with cues. So I think we knew that. But in the middle, we have something called mild cognitive impairment, or the new diagnostic manual actually calls it minor neurocognitive disorder. We just call it MCI, because that's what the majority of the world calls it. But mild cognitive impairment means that people are living with no impairment of daily activities. So their activities are doing fine, but they do have objective cognitive loss. So when we take the assessment, the score is under the age of under 26, and we can see that there's memory trouble happening with that person. About 25% of people who are living with mild cognitive impairment will remain the same. About 25% will improve, and the rest will unfortunately progress to dementia. And so dementia, at the far end, means that we have cognitive loss that's testable and our daily activities are affected by that. We have problems with daily activities. Now, question about dementia, and a lot of people ask me, is what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? And so I always answer that question. So if I told you that I played sports, that I loved sports because they're athletic and they have part of a team and they have a set of rules and they require skill, all of those sort of components that make up the word sport, what question might you ask me? What sport? What sport? So, and that is because the word sport does not tell you what I'm actually doing, right? So the short answer is that I play rugby. The long answer is that there are lots of sports. Dementia is similar. So we have a set of symptoms that make up what is a dementia. And we've talked about those symptoms today. They are memory loss, language changes, problems with visual spatial pieces, problems with problem solving and judgment, and problems with language. So we know that we have those issues, and typically we have 2 or more with most dementias. But under the umbrella of what is considered a dementia, just like there's soccer and baseball and lacrosse and rugby and all the different things, hundreds of sports, there's hundreds of dementia. In fact, there's over 100 dementias that fall under the umbrella, and Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. Now, Alzheimer's is the type of dementia we hear the most about because they say about 65% or more of all dementias diagnosed are Alzheimer-type dementia. Now, you'll see even under my raindrop with Alzheimer's disease that there are a couple different. We have young onset dementia. So young onset dementias are, Alzheimer dementia are dementias that affect people under the age of 65. We have the chromosome 21 associated dementia, so those are persons who have Down syndrome that often will progress in their life to having Alzheimer dementia. And we have late life onset dementia, which is the most common type of Alzheimer's disease, typically affecting people after the age of 65. But you'll notice that there are others. We have the 4 biggest ones here. Vascular dementia, which is the second leading cause now, which is typically caused by a stroke, but it can be caused by a multi-infarcts, which is lots of little strokes around your brain, or it can be caused by a single infarct, so one big stroke, or it can be caused by subcortical or CADASIL, which is shrinkage and problems with your arteries in your brain. So we can see vascular dementia come from many areas. We have Lewy body disease, which encompasses both Parkinson's-related dementia and diffuse Lewy body dementia. Both of those are a specific disease. They're characterized by someone who may have similar symptoms to Parkinson's. They might have the tremor and the gait and the rigidity. They also might experience hallucinations and memory loss. And we have frontal temporal dementias, which we have the disease called frontal temporal dementia, which does not present with memory problems. It's not memory. So a different kind of dementia, but all of those frontal things I talked about, your filter and your emotions and those things are affected. But you can see I've listed so many more, clearly not all 100, but there are lots of different dementias under the umbrella. Any questions about normal aging versus dementia? Okay. So I am going to start to talk a little bit about if you have someone that's concerned about dementia and a little bit of the Alzheimer's Society. But before I do that, I'd like to open it up to questions about dementia and the symptoms of dementia and any other questions you have about Alzheimer's or one of the dementias. I don't like to say I can answer everything, but I can answer most questions. So does anybody have anything I didn't talk about today that you're wishing that I would have mentioned or talked about?
You just did too good a job.
That's right. One over here.
Okay.
Is on?
It is on.
What's the role of statins, memory loss, and dementia?
Mm.
You haven't mentioned that. It seems the FDA in the States, I assume there's a similar thing here in Canada, that statins need to have a little tag on it, a possible role in dementia, also. So it does cause memory loss.
Okay. So
Definitely.
statins or blood pressure medication is what you're asking me about, okay? So I am not a nurse and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you yes or no to any one medication. But I will say there are studies now that are talking about medications and how they affect our brain over time. When we talk about blood pressure itself, blood pressure is a major risk factor for vascular dementia. So when we talk about vascular dementia, persons who live with blood pressure concerns, cholesterol concerns, problems with clogged arteries, diabetes, sleep apnea, who are smokers or have obesity concerns are at very, very high risk for vascular type dementia. And so there are looking at studies where persons who are taking statins or blood pressure medications are developing dementia. The evidence is varied with regards to whether the cause of the dementia is from the medication itself or because of living at high risk, they are developing some of this vascular dementia. Again, I can't tell you yes or no which drugs are the best drugs to take or the worst drugs to take. It is really important that we manage those risk factors, and so there are pros and cons to every medication that are in the sort of umbrella of what we might take, and important that we explore those options with the best people to do that. And I'm going to tell you, the best people to explore your medications and all the side effects, they're even more up to date than your family doctor, is your pharmacist. Yes, go ahead.
May I say, my husband's been diagnosed for 4 years. He was put on a medication. He seemed to be doing well on that. The memory clinic said, let's increase it by 50%. They did. And his symptoms are less than they were before. So they had said it may or may not work. So he's been given a medication that is working to whatever degree
So that's
for him.
Donenzepam? That's Donenzepam. Is he taking?
Pardon?
He's taking Donenzepam or Aricept?
Galantamine.
Galantamine. Okay, same group of medications. Okay, so there are 3 medications that are on the market in Canada. Technically 4, but these 3 that I'm going to talk about first are prescribed for persons living with Alzheimer's, sometimes vascular, and sometimes Lewy body disease, but not for frontal dementias. They are what we call cholinesterase inhibitors, and what they do is they change the chemical composition in your brain to support your brain health so that you may better utilize your memory. They don't actually change the trajectory of the actual disease itself. However, these 3 medications are covered by OHIP. They are Aricept, Exelon, and Remenil. Galantamine is it's a generic name. There's 2 names for each medication. There's also another medication that is called memantine or Evixa. It's a adjunct that you can take on top of that. Also approved by the Drug Administration in Canada, but not covered by OHIP. That is also taken for dementia. And we've had a new medication put into the Food and Drug Administration just this last month, Ladacatamab, which is a disease-modifying medication, brand new on the market in the States already, and we're watching that one closely. So lots of medications that are being used for dementia and lots of research around that. So great, thank you.
I would like to speak to this because I've been diagnosed with dementia. And before I moved here, we moved here 3 years ago, and before I moved here 6 years ago, I was literally down and out. And I had every symptom that was up there, the apathy, absolutely everything.
Ruth, can you just push your mic up just a little bit?
Oh, sorry. So I had absolutely everything. I was down and out. And my husband kept pushing me to get to the family doctor. And the family doctor said, okay, I'm going to start treating you for anxiety and depression. And once he started treating me for that, he said, there's more to this going on than I can deal with. Best thing that ever happened to me was they got me to a gerontologist. And I went through all the brain scans and all the testing and everything else. The diagnosis is confirmed that it is dementia. I'm not surprised because my mother, aunts, and grandparents all have it. So it's part of it's inherited. But I'll tell you, if they can get you on the proper medication, I mean, I am back to almost normal. I know I have Alzheimer's. Do not give up on it. Like, go to the doctors. And once I got treated for the anxiety and the depression, and then got on those brain boosters, it took 2 years of diagnosis, and then another year for the medications to all even off. And like, people would not know me from, if you saw me 6 years ago, I was virtually a vegetable. And I'm not now. So you go to the doctor, you get diagnosed, and I know I've got it, and I know it's going to get worse. I'll plateau it, like I'm plateauing right now, and if I can stay like this for 8 to 10 years, great. I know I'm going to deteriorate. But I'll tell you, there is hope out there. Like, don't give up. Push the people that you know. Get to a doctor. And if you can get to a gerontologist, my gosh, they can do things for you. Do not give up. Because I've been there, and I'll tell you, it's not a pretty place to be.
So I want to say thank you, Ruth, for being brave enough to share with us tonight. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, I've been part of the Alzheimer's Society for 21 years, and I get the distinct honor to work with many, many people with dementia in my career, and to meet them and to be part of their lives. And I will say that you're absolutely positively right. The worst thing you can do is sit home and ignore your symptoms. The worst thing you can do is not get tested for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes people experience the symptoms we talk about today for reversible reasons. And it's really, really important that we get that full comprehensive assessment. Now, comprehensive assessment means we're not just doing a MOCA. We're not just doing a Montreal Cognitive Assessment. We're not just doing a paper quiz out of 30. What we're doing is we're doing a full family history, a blood workup, potentially a CAT scan or an MRI. That doesn't mean everyone gets one, but certainly sometimes. You're going to make sure that you are looking at a depression screen as you went through, because those things can also affect our brain health, and it's really important to treat all those things and to improve our health as much as possible, and then look at the medications that we talked about to support our brain health. And people do live well with dementia. Some people live well with dementia for up to 30 years. So I think it's important that, I think one of the misconceptions that we have about dementia is that dementia means that you're incapable of doing everything, and that is not true. Dementia means that you have to change your lifestyle. If I told you you had diabetes, you'd go home, you'd fix your sugar levels, you'd watch what you eat, potentially exercise, maybe. You take the medications I prescribed, you take your metformin and your Ozempic or whatever you're taking these days. But you do those things, and dementia is the same. You know, do not be afraid to go to the doctor and make sure you get a test. So thank you for sharing that.
Hi. Problem in Niagara is a big lack of geriatricians. Okay, so Niagara is losing a great geriatrician, Dr. Sofranios, and there's really no others.
Okay.
And that's...
So Dr. Sofranios, or Dr. Sam of the Big Feet, he calls himself. You're right, Dr. Sofranios is retiring for the 5th time in my career, but he is retiring. We do have the geriatric assessment program. It's housed out of the Niagara Falls General Hospital. Dr. Al Khatib and Dr. Sam Thrall, who's fairly new to the area, have taken over that site. They do bring in some other geriatricians periodically to support the Niagara region, but you are right. The wait time right now, especially coming out of the COVID pandemic, where we have quite a backlog of people who We're not going to see the doctor. We're not leaving their houses at all. Unfortunately, it is about 18 months to get into a geriatrician, which is outrageous. We know that, and we have a Ontario Health Team Dementia Care Working Group working very diligently to find solutions to get people their comprehensive assessments more quickly. We do, however, have a memory clinic teams around the Niagara region. So if you're not familiar with the memory clinic, a memory clinic is a specialized training in providing the diagnosis of dementia. And they are paired with someone who has expertise in dementia, typically from the Alzheimer's Society. And they are also paired with a nurse practitioner, a neurooccupational therapist, and a pharmacist. So typically what happens, and they have a support geriatrician who they can call if they need them. These allied health professional teams, these memory clinic teams, are housed inside of every family health team, except for the one here in Grimsby. I don't know why they don't have one. Grimsby Meadsville doesn't have one, but 5 others in the Niagara region have a clinic. 2 of them have opened their doors to unrostered patients. So that means if you live with a concern about your memory and you're thinking, I want a comprehensive assessment or a second opinion outside my family doctor, because the family doctor should still be your first stop and your first line of defense, you can request a referral to a memory clinic. And if your doctor is not sure how to do that, you tell them to give the Alzheimer's Society a call and we'll walk them through the process.
I have a question regarding that. A family doctor that has asked a friend of mine to come in and have an assessment, but needs to have someone go with them.
Right.
And is that the start?
Yes, it's really important for us because of that anosognosia we talked about. Persons who live with memory loss that may be dementia don't always have the full insight into what's happening, and they can't really articulate the full picture of all of the things that are going on. And so we do rely very heavily on families to give a picture of what's happening as well. So we ask persons who come to a clinic appointment or a geriatric appointment to bring a family member who knows you really well, and to be prepared for that person to be taken in another room and to be asked questions about how you're doing. It gives us a much better opportunity to give an accurate diagnosis. So it is really important to have a family member if we can do that.
I've been involved with physical fitness, and I'm wondering if you could comment on the individual's fitness relative to dementia, because what I was taught when I took my course was that physical fitness can delay the onset of dementia.
It can, and we are going to break down physical fitness, nutrition, socialization, and all of those really important aspects of healthy brain in my presentation in June, because I am coming back. But I will tell you that you're right, there is studies. We know that physical fitness and getting our blood pumping also increases the oxygen levels in our body and therefore to our brain. And there is a protective factor that physical fitness does to the brain cells in our brain, which I will talk more about when I come back. But you're right, physical fitness is a very important preventative measure. What other questions do you have? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Alzheimer's Society itself, just so you have an idea of what's out there if you are living with dementia or you want more information. So if you're concerned you have dementia, or you know someone who has dementia and you want somebody, first line of defense, and I think we've already said this, is discuss your concerns with your doctor. It is very important to get to a doctor, and then we want to contact First Link at the Alzheimer's Society. You do not need to have a diagnosis of dementia to be involved with the Alzheimer's Society. You can access their programs because you want to learn more about dementia yourself. You can access their programs because you're living with dementia. You can access their programs because you're caring for someone with dementia. You don't need a doctor to refer you. So this is us. This is not the way we look right now. We're buried in a construction zone because Lynnhaven is rebuilding their property on Ontario Street. We look like a shed next to their new building. However, This is where we are. We are at 403 Ontario Street in St. Catharines. We do service the entire region, and we do that by having outreach programs all over the place. So we do run several programs here in the Grimsby, West Lincoln sort of area, and our family support counseling team does visits in people's homes. So they come to see people at home when they're providing support. We do have fresh coffee and a good set of bathrooms. If you are in the area and need to stop in, we'd love to see you. We also have a lending library and a full array of different pamphlets. I brought a very small smattering of pamphlets today, sort of to complement what I'm talking about. But if you want more information, both our website, and if you're not a website lover and you happen to be coming up to, I used to say if you're coming to Costco, but the Costco's a business Costco now. But if you're coming through St. Catharines and want to stop in, we'd love to see you. We're open 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. We offer several different opportunities at the Alzheimer Society. So the first one is support. So we have what we call a client support outreach team. We have 10 counseling staff who provide free in-home counseling to patients living with dementia and their families. As needed, they are experts in dementia and have lots and lots of training. We also offer support groups in many locations, including one that's out here in Grimsby. So we do have support groups that you can attend, and we have all of our programs are also offered as an option online as well. So if you prefer Zoom, you learned Zoom through the pandemic and really love it, which some people do. They like to do things from the comfort of their living room. You can join many of our programs that way as well. And you can check those all out on our website, or you can give us a call and we'll walk you through it. You know, research shows that to live well with dementia, it's really important to be socially interactive, to know the disease, stay active, and challenge your brain. So we incorporate all of those things into our programs, and that's really important. We have a lot of educational programs. Now I'm here today doing a one-off, we call this a one-off education because Judy invited me to come, but we offer ongoing education on a monthly basis, open for the public that can come, anybody can come that is interested. Our four-part Next Steps to Care Essentials program is, I think, probably the most important class that someone who's a caregiver can take. It's 4 weeks, but well worth the effort to come. We have classes for persons living with dementia who want to help themselves, so opportunities to learn about some of the strategies for themselves. We also have support groups and advisory groups. So we have persons living with dementia who advise us on all of our programs, and we really enjoy our advisory group, and we're always looking for people to join that as well. We also have lots of social recreation programming. The social recreation programming are brand new cafes or a place to stop by, have a cup of coffee, get to know other people who have dementia and care partners, but more importantly to engage in those healthy brain activities. And we have some exercise activities, coming back to that exercise. We have Minds in Motion, which is a physical activity run by the YMCA, so I know everyone thinks they're closed, but they still exist, they just don't have a physical building. And they run our exercise program for us, and then we do brain stimulant activities. We also, just so you know, have programs for the mild cognitive impairment. So if anyone has a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, so that's the precursor to dementia or potentially being able to maintain that, we're running the ROPES program. So the ROPES program is a program designed by Baycrest Health in Toronto, and so it's an evidence-based program for people with MCI. You can come join us for that as well. So the referral process is really easy. If you want to get involved, all you have to do is pick up the phone, dial this phone number. I did send the slide deck to Judy, but you can pick up any one of those pamphlets and this phone number will be on it. You can visit our website, and there's an online referral form there. You can use that instead, or come on by and have a chat. Just come in and sit down, and someone will sit down with you and chat with you right in the moment. So easy referral, and like I said, you do not need a doctor. So that's the end of my presentation today. Are there any additional questions? Anyone think of anything else they really want to ask me?
Your Zoom programs, are they pre-recorded?
No, they're live.
No, okay.
If you want pre-recorded education, you can visit Alzheimer Educate, so it's ALZ Educate, and register, and there's literally hundreds of topics in there that are pre-recorded and put up there through our Toronto, there's some courses and things you can do them from home that way.
So they're not available like next day or later at all?
No, we don't do that because they're live and people share stories, and so due to confidentiality and privacy, we don't share our live programming. But there are pre-recorded educational sessions on almost all the topics that we do. You can find them that way as well.
And Tibia Tuesdays?
TIPA Tuesdays is one of our newer programs. So for those of you who are not familiar with what TIPA Tuesday is, TIPA Snow is a certified trainer out of the United States who created the Positive Approaches to Care training. And I am a PAC certified, it's part of my bio that I don't give. I'm a PAC certified instructor, and so that means that I can offer opportunities to do positive approaches to care training, and we are doing TIPA Tuesdays once a month right now, and that is on Zoom. Yeah.
And they're not pre-recorded?
We do not record them, no.
So if you don't get in that time slot, you're out of luck.
For that particular session, but we reprise most of our sessions, like more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, so I'm coming back in June to talk about healthy brain. And we'll break down all the things you can do to help, according to the landmark study, prevent dementia and keep yourself healthy. If you're really interested in that information, I think I brought the orange pamphlet. You can take a look at that one if you're not going to be here, or you can check out our website. And thank you so much.